Yo, what is going on, gamers, and welcome back to another PUBG video. Hey, in this video I'm going to be breaking down the three main sections of each PUBG match that you have to work your way through in order to end up with that tasty chicken dinner. First and foremost, sorry if I sound nasally. On the tail end of a cold here, almost 100% over it, but I did want to get this video out to you guys. So, there are three main sections of each PUBG match that you're going to have to endure if you want to get that chicken dinner. Okay, the first is the landing. The second is the zoning process, and the third and final is the end game. So, let's break these down one at a time. First, you got landing. So, obviously, landing is a bit of a chess match. You kind of have to pick where you want to fall on the risk and reward scale. So, I tend to prefer high risk, high reward places. And there's a good reason for that. But some people prefer to land in places that have a little less opposition, but generally have less loot. So you're kind of playing the RNG here. You're kind of hoping that you can land someplace that's a little bit safer and maybe just get lucky on your drops. Some people prefer that method. I personally don't. I prefer landing in places that have medium to high risk and reward. So places where more people are going to land because they're known for having better loot. Places like school, which you're seeing in the gameplay here, where I land close to first with a handful of other people. I ended up wiping, I think, 4 people in order to get control of the school. But the reason that I prefer high risk, high reward places is because I don't want to end up in a scenario where I have no guns or, you know, mediocre to poor gear, and then I spend 20 minutes running to get to my first gunfight in PUBG after I landed in someplace remote. I spent 20 minutes running to get to my first engagement just to lose it to somebody who ended up with better gear than I did. And so I basically just wasted, you know, 20 minutes to half an hour of my life playing Running Simulator 2017. So I don't like that feeling. So I would much prefer to get into the action quickly. And if I come out on top, I'm then pretty geared up for the rest of the match. So RNG is a big factor in the landing process. You know, did you happen to land closer to a gun than somebody else? You know, you can't control that. There's a lot of things outside of your control, like where weapons spawn and if you're gonna get one first. So you just kind of have to use your ears. Ultimately, your goal here is just to make this your hill. Like, this is my place, right? And you want to fight for it. And you may come out on top, you may not. But you definitely just want to go for the essentials first. Grab the guns and armor that you see. Don't worry about sort of the, you know, the odds and ends that you want to get into your loadout. Just worry about winning the area first, and then you can go through, okay, now I want to find a level 2 backpack, maybe want to find a couple of extra boosts after you've won your area. But you really just want to make that first landing spot your hill. This is my place, and I prefer doing that in these high risk, high reward places so I can come out with some pretty good stuff. So the second section of winning these PUBG matches is what I call the zoning section of the game. And that's where basically everyone's already landed. Everyone who's left on the map are the people who won their sort of landing areas respectively. And we're all looted up, and now we're trying to converge. So you're using your map to find out where the last circle is, you know, roughly going to be. You can usually get a pretty good sense off of the first or second zone as it comes in. You can say, okay, well, this is clearly going to end up somewhere maybe over by Pachinki, or maybe up in the far upper right corner of the map. So that can sometimes tell you what you need to do in terms of movement, because sometimes you can see very clearly early on that you're going to have to cross some water. Maybe you're going to cross the rivers just north of Razak. You don't want to have to cross those things late in the game, because people bridge troll. They use the bridges as bottlenecks, and they use your vulnerability in the water against you. So you definitely want to keep an eye on you know, where the map is sort of condensing towards, and make a plan onto how to get there. There's a couple different approaches. Some people, you know, I watch a lot of streamers. I watch a lot of Grim. I watch Grims. I watch obviously Dr. Disrespect, Sakro, you know, Ruski. There's a lot of really great players, Ninja, who take this approach where in the mid game what they do is they really like the high risk high reward landing sections, so they usually come out of it pretty well looted up, so they don't necessarily need to go from town to town, from building to building, to spend additional time getting better loot. They don't necessarily need to do that. They're pretty well geared up for firefights, and they're pretty comfortable with their loadouts. So what they do is they often find a vehicle, and right after the landing stage they make an assumption about where the end is going to be, and then they just book it. They book it into the middle of the circle. They get a nice powerful position, and they start picking off people as they come into the zone. So that's a pretty good strategy. It works out pretty well for people who are geared up. If, for example, you landed somewhere and you came out of it with pretty poor loot, then you're definitely going to want to, usually you're going to want to play the rim instead. So a lot of guys will play the rim. You have a lot of teams you see in the gameplay here. A team that's just basically staying right on the edge of the blue wall, and sometimes even getting themselves behind it and kind of using their boosts and their heals to sort of stay right on the edge of it. But you can punish people for doing that. It's kind of dangerous to play the rim. Sometimes you're kind of forced to based on your loot, but other times people do it just to try and stay out of engagements. They want to get to the end game, so they're going to play the rim. They're going to stay on the edges of the blue circle because they don't want to get into firefights. Some people prefer that passive gameplay. So if you're that person, you have to be very, very aware. You have to be checking doors as you're coming up to settlements. Look at the doors, see if they're open, see if they're closed, see if maybe they're open inward on one end of the building and outward on the other, and that tells you that they ran from that direction out the building, out the other side. Sort of get a sense as to how people have been moving through these areas, and use that information to make a calculated assumption about where they might be next. You definitely don't want to get baited. A lot of people will camp buildings and they just won't move. They'll stay in there with a shotgun or an SMG of some kind, and they'll just camp there. They'll wait for you to open the door and walk in. They're using the third-person camera to get an idea about where you are, and you're at an extreme. I mean, you are at an extreme disadvantage against campers in this game at the early and mid-game sections. So you definitely want to try and be as aware as possible. Always assume that somebody is nearby. Always assume that somebody is in a building waiting for you. You definitely want to try to get used to tab running, where you're running through fields or you're running from one area to the next. Use tab to not change the directions of where you're running, but use tab just to sort of spin your camera around while you're running and check the area and make sure that you get a good sense about what's going on around you. You definitely don't want to get caught with somebody running up the same hill as you off to your right, just outside of your peripherals, but you can't see them. So definitely do the tab running, hold tab, spin your camera around as you're running up the hill or whatever, and sometimes you can catch other teams approaching the same areas as you, and you can see them first if you're just using tab. So that can help you kind of understand, okay, well, I need to get the cover first, spin around, start engaging them, or maybe it's like, okay, well, I better boost up, So definitely use tab running to your advantage. The final section of the game is the end game. This is highly dependent on your use of cover. You definitely want to have boosts and meds ready, things like first aid kits, med kits, and painkillers and energy drinks really come in clutch here at the end. A lot of times you take damage, you got to get into cover, heal up, pop back out, and try and engage again. Grenades are hugely important in the end game as well. A lot of people will lob them over so that you can attempt to knock people out or get kills on people without actually exposing yourself. Or it's a really good way to flush them out from behind a tree or behind a rock or out of a hut. So you definitely want to have those things available to you at the end game. So a lot of people will camp at the very end too. They'll get into a powerful position like a house or a hut, and you'll see in the gameplay here it's about to come up. I'm actually gonna come down to a 2v2 at the very end zone. It happens to be the last two guys are camping inside of a bathroom with SMGs and shotguns. So what we do is we loot up the bodies around it, we get some grenades off of them, and then we just chuck them into the bathroom for the last two kills for the chicken dinner. So you definitely want to boost up. You definitely have to understand that this part of the game is forced, or it's designed to force you to expose yourself. So you're probably gonna have to take some damage. That's why those heals are so important. So you definitely want to be on the lookout for belly crawlers, people who are crawling through fields in the tall grass. Oftentimes they'll just lay down and let people duke it out and try and just use a third-person camera to get an understanding about where everyone is without exposing themselves. So definitely be looking around in the grass for the belly crawlers. Yeah, so hopefully you can get yourself a nice chicken dinner using some of these strategies, understanding how each section of the game works. Definitely understand that in the end game, your goal is to locate ridges, maybe high points, places of power, and get there first. That's really crucial to winning these matches. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you end up with some tasty chicken dinner somewhere along the way. And I know I really enjoy this game. Hopefully you do too. And looking forward to playing some more of it. We'll catch you later.